ELC
We're
is
now
open already?
on the top of Lamed Aleph Amid Beis, and the Gemara has just established that the Shar Hamayim is 20 amos high. On top of the Shar Hamayim, on the roof, there was a mikveh, and the mikveh had to be a minimum of 3 amos in its height. And if you add 20 plus 3, you have a height starting from the ground of the Azor of 23 amos high. So that's where they had channels to bring the water from a place called Ein Eitan. That's the Mayan, was the spring, the natural spring of water from which they channeled in the water for that mikvah on the Shar Mayim, must have been at a height of 23 amos high, because otherwise, how would you draw the water downwards into the mikvah? Water doesn't go up, it goes down. So the Gemara says the calculation doesn't make any sense. Why? Va'ika ama tikra. A mikvah needs a roof on top of it, and the water would have to come from on top going down into the roof. The roof presumably is 1 amma thick. Not only that, says the Gemara, beyond that, the amma maziva. When you build a mikvah, you have to pave the mikvah on the bottom with stones, and that's going to be another amma, so that the calculation here is off. It shouldn't be 23 amma, it should be 25 amma. And the Gemara answers, Shi'arim de Beis HaMikdash, Keva de Shisha Ninu, is b'mashu avdilu. The Gemara establishes that when we talk about the Beis HaMikdash, whether it's the maziva on the bottom of the floor, or it's going to be the shar or the tikra on top of the shar, the roof on top of it, it's always going to be made of marble. And marble, even if it's very thin, could prevent any water from going in. It's not porous. So the Gemara says, what do you mean, b'mashu avdile? Va'ika hachmashu. Okay, you may say that it's a very thin slab on top or on the bottom, but nevertheless, it's more than 23 amas. And the Gemara says, Kevin de lohavi amsa lo chashuvu. Anything less than an amma is not in the calculation. So basically, when we say 23 amma, we mean less than 24 amma. And that distance and that discrepancy between 23 and 24 is not considered here. Now the Mishnah says, Parsu sadin shel butz. When the Kohen Gadol went into the mikvah, they would set up a curtain to give him privacy that was made of linen. Maishna shel butz, why did they make it of linen? Kida Omer Rav Kahana, this reflects the statement of Rav Kahana. Kidei sheyakir shavodas hayom b'bigdei butz. It was a message to remind the Kohen Gadol that today, when he does the special avodos lifnai v'lifnim inside the mikdash, he's got to wear his big day butz, meaning his linen garments, what we call big day bad or big day lavan. Achinami sheyakir shavodas hayom the big day butz. Remind him that today's avoda is the big day butz. Now, Rav Kahana's statement in interpreting the Mishnah later on in Daf Lamed Daled, it says Parsu Sadin Shal Butz Ben Kohen Gadol Ben Ha'am Kodem Tefillah Shniya, is when it says here Kadesh Yakir Shavodas Hayom B'Bigdei Butz, he means to say that on a daily basis, with the exception of Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol wore Bigdei Zav, and those were 8 begadim. And to remind him that as far as the special avodos, the unique avodos of Yom Kippurim, Lifnai v'Lifnim, then he changes into Big Day Lavan. And in the first Vila, even though he's not ready to put on his Big Day Bad, he's actually changing from Big Day Chol to don Big Day Zav for the Carbon Talmud. Nevertheless, we already remind him in advance. That's going to be an extension of Rav Kahana's principle to remind him in advance that his special avodos lifnai v'lifnim will be performed while he's wearing big day boots. And now we're up to the Mishnah here on Daf Lamed Aleph Amid Beis. Now, in the previous Mishnayos, they took the Kohen Gadol from the Lishkas Beis Avtinus, which is where he was studying the laws of the Ketores, and they took him to the Beis HaTfilah, which was on top of the Shar HaMayim, which was outside the Azor, because this is the first Tefillah, which is Bechol. Now, before he went down to the mikvah, they placed this Sadin Shalbut to separate him from give him privacy from the people. And our Mishnah here that we're about to study now deals with the laws of the first Tefillah. Okay, and this first Tefillah is a preliminary stage before the Avodas Tamid Shel Shachar. The Mishnah says, Poshat, he now takes off his big day chol, which he was wearing, and Yorad, he goes to the mikveh Toval, and after his Tefillah, all of it is stopping. He comes up from the water of the mikveh, and he dries himself, his body, with what's called a beged aluntis, which is some sort of a very a very good towel to dry yourself with. And the importance here is that he dry himself, because if he doesn't dry himself and then he puts on his big day zav for the first avod of the Talmud, there could be a chatzitza here between his body and the big day zav if there's any water, droplets of water from the mikvah. So he's got to dry himself from the mikvah. Then the Mishnah continues and says, "A viulo big day zav," and now they bring him the big day zav, and it seems from this Mishnah that Trumas Hadeshin on the night of Yom Kippur was done by the Kohen Gadol, and then the question arises, if the Kohen Gadol was already involved before daybreak in the Trumas Hadeshin, that he was already wearing big day zav from midnight and on. So what's the language of the Mishnah? Hey, viulo big day zav, and this would imply a proof to the sheet of the Ramban that the Trumas Hadeshin was not done by the Kohen Gadol. Mishnah continues, v'lavash, now he wears the big day zav. These are 8 begadim that the Kohen Gadol wears. They have zav on it, and this is for the avoda outside of the Kodesh Kodashim. And the Mishnah says, kidesh v'kidesh yadav v'raglav. This is the first of, as we saw in the Mishnah, 10 times that he does kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. The first time he does it is after he wears his big day zav for the avodas hatamid. Now, heviulo es hatamid. They bring him the little shepsel of the tleh for the tamid, the little lamb. And during the entire course of the year, the Kohen would shecht, and another Kohen would be makabel adam. But on Yom Kippurim, it had to be a little different, because all the avodas have to be implemented by the Kohen Gadol. So what did they do? The Kohen Gadol took the shechita knife and vikrotzel, and very quickly he did the chituch. He cut the neck of the tleh of the korban tamid, rov shnei simonim. You know, it's most of the kana, the veshet, the esophagus, and the windpipe, and that's enough for a shechita kshera. Now he gives the knife over umerek to another kohen, a regular kohen, who's going to do the rest of the shechita, because now the shechita was kshera. Now, by handing over the knife to a kohen, now the Kohen Gadol is free, his hands are free, to receive the dam. He can do the kabbalas hadam in a mizrach, in a receptacle. And merek acher ashchita al yodo, and although there's a mitzvah to complete the shechita, but that's only a mitzvah b'divrei sofrim, and that could be implemented by a regular kohen. Kibel, now the Kohen Gadol is makabel es adam into a mizrach that he has in his hands, and then he's molech the dam uzrako, and he does the zrika of the dam on the outside mizbeach, and that's called shtei matonos shein arba, because we're talking about a korban olah, which means that he goes from the keren zavis mizrachis, from the zavis mizrachis tzfonis over to the Keren Zavis Maravis Dromis, and then he has Shiuri Adam, that's the Shofech Al Yisod Mizbeach, and the Kohanim would now take over the Hafshatas Ha'or, the Nituach Evarim, and prepare the Tlef HaKtorah. Again, this is a Karbonolis, everything is Muktar Gabi Mizbeach. Nichnas Lahaktir Ktorah Shel Shach. Now we're not talking about the famous, unique avodah of the Ktoras of Yom Kippur. We're talking about the daily avodas Ktoras Shel Shachar that applies every day of the year. Just that the rest of the year, it's not the Kohen Gadol necessarily does the avodah, but on Yom Kippur, he would have to do the avodah of the Ktores. And this goes on again inside the Heichal in the Mizbach Hazav. Once he's in the Heichal, he does Hatovas HaNeros, right? The menorah is in the Heichal. And what he has to do is, he has to make sure that there's no leftover wicks or ashes from yesterday's Hadlaka, the previous Hadlaka. They removed the leftover ashes, oils, wicks, and that's called Hatovas HaNeros. And then what he does is he leaves spoons with the new shemen. That's called shemen chadosh, and then psilos chadoshos. And all this he sets up in the menorah in the Heichal. Now the Kohen Gadol goes back into the Azara to finish and complete the avodah of the Korban Tamid. Lahakriv es harosh, the es ha'ivarim. He's makriv first the rush. So actually, the Kohen Gadol would have to place these segments of the lamb onto the eish, something that he doesn't have to do the rest of the year. Another Kohen will do. Ves ha'ivarim. Ha'ivarim here refers to Aglayim, Yodayim, Oketz, Chazet, Tzavar, Defanos, all the different segments, the kishkis of this carbon, and then vachavit. Now he's ready for the mincha of the Kohen Gadol. The mincha of the Kohen Gadol on a daily basis was called the minchas chavitim, and the minchas chavitim was made of an asiris ha'ephah, and from the asiris ha'ephah of soles, of refined flour, they made 12 chalos. And these chalos were very unique. In any event, the Kohen Gadol was makriv half of those chalos in the morning with the Tamid Shel Shachar, and the other half, the other 6 chalos, with the Tamid Shel Ben Arbayim. Now, v'es hayayin, we're up to the nisuch of a revius hayayin, and like any other carbon ola, which requires an accompaniment of nisuch, hin, yayin, so too the Tamid, which is a carbon ola, requires nisuch of a revius hahin yayin, and if I'm not mistaken, a hin of shemen. I don't have that here right now. Let me just see. Okay. Okay, I don't want to get off on a tangent. That has to be researched. For that, you have to know menachas. In any event, now the Tana finished explaining the avodas carbon tamid of Shachar Yom Kippurim, and now, once he's dealing with the carbon of the tamid and the Ktores, the Tana now brings a din that has nothing to do with Yom Kippurim per se, but applies to the Ktores and the tamid of the entire year. Ktores shel Shachar Isakreva bein dam le'evarim. Interesting. The Ktores, and we'll have a lot to discuss about this, wedges between the beginning of the avodah of the Tamid and the end of the avodah of the Tamid. So it's going to be A and C are the Tamid, and B in the middle is going to be the Aktaris HaKtoris. So A is the Zrikas Adam, C is going to be the Aktaris Eivarim, and in between the Zrika and the Aktaris Eivarim, we have in the middle the Aktaris HaKtoris. That's as far as Ktores Shel Shachar. It's different, in contrast, Ktores Shel Ben Arbayim. There, Bein Haivarim Linisach. There, we go with A and C, now becomes A and B. In other words, we immediately after the Zrikas Adam, we do the Ketores Haivarim. Then we do the Ketores, and then we do the libations, the Niskei Yain. And all this is going to be derived from Psuki. Now the Mishnah goes back to the Kohen Gadol again. With regard to his Tefillah, Im Haya Kohen Gadol Zaken, if the Kohen Gadol was old and weak, and therefore it was very hard for him to jump into a cold, freezing mikvah, Istanis, or even if he's a younger Kohen, but he's an Istanis, he's very sensitive to cold. So what can we do on his behalf on Yom Kippurim to warm up the mikvah? They didn't have warming, mechanisms like we have today. So what do? On Erev Yom Kippur, mechamim lo chamin, we heat up water, and atichos ovashal barzel al gabi gechol, we heat up on the fire pieces of slabs of metal. Metal obviously conducts heat. Umatilin l'sochatzone. So again, on Erev Yom Kippur, we place these slats of metal on the hot fire, and on Yom Kippur, we're going to take these slats and we're going to throw them into the mikveh that's cold. Kidei shetofig tzinosan. So it's going to remove some of the freezing temperature of that mikveh, make it easier to facilitate the tefillah of the Kohen Gadol. Gemara is going to have a whole long discussion about how you're allowed to do that on Yom Kippur. Isn't this a malacha which is called mitzaref? We'll see what that means later on. Now we start the Gemara. In the previous Mishnah, back on Daf Lamed, it said that there were 5 tefillos and 10 kiddushim that the Kohen Gadol implemented during the course of the day of Yom Kippur. It would seem that with regard to each tefillah of 5, there were 2 kiddushim. Hence, 2 times 5 is 10. 10 kiddushim. Now the Gemara is going to clarify our Mishnah here on Daf Lamed Aleph that says that the Tefillah Rishona only had 1 kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. That's going to reflect a certain shita in the Tanoim that with regard to the first Tefillah, we don't apply the principle of 1 kiddush before or 1 kiddush after. It's going to be only 1 kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. That's going to lead us to another question that in calculating now, we come up with only 9 kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. Where do we get to number 10? Amru Rabbanan Kami de Rav Papa. What's unique about this shita is that the Talmidim actually pointed out to their Rebbe, Rav Papa, something that he himself, Rav Papa, didn't know. So Rav Papa was analyzing this whole sugya of kiddush yadayim v'raglayim logically, and he came up with his interpretation. But the Talmidim quoted a brisa that Rav Papa was unaware of, and then Rav Papa had to rescind his original position. Anyway, our Mishnah that establishes that the first tefillah of the Kohen Gadol only had 1 kiddush, the lo Rabbi Meir. This is against the shita of Rabbi Meir, because Rabbi Meir is of the opinion that a levisha, and in this case the Kohen Gadol, after he takes off his big day chol, is going to don his big day kodesh, big day zav. According to Rabbi Meir, levisha generates 2 kiddushim, 1 before and 1 after, which would mean that even the first tefillah, which is after the Kohen Gadol removes big day chol and puts on for the first time his big day zav, that tefillah generates 2 different kiddushim. And our Mishnah here could not therefore be reconciled with Rabbi Meir, says Rav Papa, because our Mishnah says that the first tefillah only requires 1 kiddush, which means that our Mishnah reflects the shita of Chachamim against Rabbi Meir, whereas Rabbi Meir holds that the levisha generates 2 kiddushim, 1 before, 1 after. The Chachamim disagreed. They hold that pshita, meaning taking off the begadim, generates one kiddush, and then putting on the new begadim, you have one kiddush for the other begadim that you took off, that you were wearing before, and then another kiddush for the sake of the new begadim, the new levisha. And that doesn't apply to the first tvila, because with regard to the first tvila, he was taking off big day chol. So therefore the pshita would not generate a chi of kiddush yadayim raglayim. So our Mishnah says Rav Papa works beautifully. I'm sorry, the Talmidim of Rav Papa works beautifully according to the Chachamim, but is irreconcilable with the sheet of Rabbi Meir. The Rabbi Meir, if our Mishnah would have agreed with Rabbi Meir's shita, is Kevon the Omar. Now, Rabbi Meir actually appears in the Mishnah later on in Daf Lamed Dalet with regard to the Seder of the second Tvila. Rabbi Meir's shita is that the Kohen Gadol is not Mekadesh Yoda Varagla before he takes off his big day Zav, which means that Rabbi Meir does not accept the principle that Pshita, taking off the begadim that he wore until now, is Machayev Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, but rather he takes off his begadim. Now he's about to put on new begadim. Now he is Tovel, and he is, he takes off his, let's say he's about to enter into the Kodesh Kedoshim. So first, he takes off his big day Zav, with which he did the Avodas HaTamid. Then he does Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. He's already taken off his big day Zav. So it can't be that this Tvila, that this Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim is related to Pshita, because then it would come before the Pshita. Reb Meir holds that after the Pshita, he's about to be Tovel and put on big day Lavan. Now, after the Pshita, he's Mekadesh Yoda Raglav, then he goes into the mikvah, and then he puts on his begadim, and then he does another Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. So Reb Meir's shita is that the Tvila, that the Levisha itself generates a double Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, one before the Levisha and one after Levisha. Trei Kiddush Levisha Avid. And if that be the case, then if we apply that to the first Kiddush, meaning the first time he's Tovel, when he takes off his big day Kol in order to put on his big day Zav, then Hachanami Liavid Shrei Kiddush al Levisha. He needs two Kiddushim on Levisha. Who cares if he's taking off big day Chol? That's irrelevant, because according to Rabbi Meir, the Machayev of Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim is not Pshita, which would mean that Pshita big day Chol would circumvent the need for a Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, but rather Levisha. So the first Levisha big day Zav, for the sake of the Korban Talmud, would require, according to Rabbi Meir, two different Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. One before he puts on the big day Lavan, and one after he puts on the big day Lavan. Amalahu, Sir Papa responded, no. You can reconcile our Mishnah Bein l'Rabbanan Bein l'Rabbi Meir. You made a big mistake. That's how Rav Papa instructed his Talmidim. But again, keep in mind, Rav Papa is going to rescind this. But you misunderstood Rabbi Meir. You thought that Rabbi Meir holds that Levisha is Machayev to Kiddushim. That's not so. Everybody agrees, even Rabbi Meir, Chada Pshita, the big day Kodesh, Chada Levisha. That Rabbi Meir agrees that Pshita, taking off the begadim, is also a Machayev of Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, no less than the Levisha. So at this point, both Rabbi Meir and the Chacham agreed that there are two different Machayevim of Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. One is Pshita, taking off his garments, and the other is Levisha, which would mean that in the case of the first Levisha, there's no Pshita to generate, and even Rabbi would agree that there's only one Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. So what then is the machlokas between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim, according to Rav Papa? The pasuk says, this is in Vayikra Tezayin Pasuk of Gimel, it says, Upashat es bigdei abad, Verachatz es besara b'mayim v'lavash es b'gadav. Now, because an earlier pasuk already said, that's pasuk Tezayin earlier I'm sorry, Pasuk Dalet, early in the parsha, it already says, Big Day Kodesh Hein V'rachatz B'mayim. So why does the Torah repeat here V'rachatz B'mayim a second time? And the answer is that this V'rachatz is going to say something about Upashat and Vilavash. So it's as if it said, Upashat is Big Day Habad V'rachatz, and then V'rachatz Vilavash es Begodim. We're going to multiply the word V'rachatz as if it said it twice, once for the Pshita and once for the Levisha. And herein lies the machlokes between Rabbi Meir and the Chacham. We have in this pasuk a hekesh between Pshita and Levisha. And the question is, in which direction, what is the Malamed and what is the Nilman? Rabbi Meir Sover, Makish, Pshita, Levisha. Levisha is going to teach, and Pshita is going to be a derivative. But again, even Rabbi Meir agrees that there are two kiddushim for both, one for Pshita and one for Levisha. Ma Levisha lovesh v'ach kach mekadesh, af Pshita poshet v'ach kach mekadesh. In other words, Rabbi Meir derives from this hekesh the sequence that tells me what is the relationship between Pshita and Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. What is the sequence? Which comes first and which comes second? And just like, says Rabbi Meir, in the case of Levisha, first he wears the begadim, then he does Kiddush. So too in the case of Pshita, first he takes off the begadim, and then he does Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. But again, it's not that Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim is for the anticipating what comes later, the Levisha. It's on the previous Pshita. Rabban and Savri Makish Pshita Levisha. We go in the opposite direction. We're gonna derive from Levisha, Pshita Levisha, Ma Levisha is Kishu Lavush Mekadesh Yadav Viraglov. Is af Kiddush al Pshita Kshu Lavush Mekadesh Yadav Viraglov. Which means that according to the Shita, the Chachamim, they hold that there's a Kiddush before he takes off his begadim, and that's going to be derived from Levisha because he does the Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim when he's in a state of Lavush, and therefore, even in the case of Pshita, he should do the Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim when he's in a state of Lavush before he takes off his clothes. So again, the whole machlokus now, according to our Papa's formulation between Rabbi Meir and Chachamim, can be reduced to one question. When we say that Pshita generates a Chi of Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, when does that Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim actually take place? According to Rabbi Meir, it takes place after the Pshita, and it goes L'mafreya, so to speak. Whereas according to the Chachamim, it takes place before the Pshita. Just like in the case of Levisha, he does the Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim when he's Lavush, meaning after Levisha. So too in Pshita, he has to be Lavush, and therefore he's going to do the Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim before he takes off his begadim. Amalei Rabbanon, Rabbanon, Talmidim of Rabbanon had news for him. There was a brisa that addresses Rabbi Meir, and Rav Papa was unaware of this brisa. Mimatzis Amris Hachi. Can you really tell me that according to Rabbi Meir, the Levisha generates a chiyuv of only one Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, and the Pshita is going to generate the other Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim? Vasani, we have a brisa that says, Parsu Sadin Shel Butz Beino Levena Am. And now we're talking about the Avodas Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippurim, and we'll see exactly in a minute that this is going to be before he starts his avodah. They set up a sadin shel butz, right, that linen curtain, and that separates him from the am. Poshat means he takes off his begadim. We're talking about the big nechol. V'yorad v'toval, olav v'nistapeg, heviu lo big day zov, v'lovash v'kidesh yodav v'raglov, Rabbi Meir, that's the Tanakama. So this brisa begins with the Shita of the Chachamim, and the Shita of the Chachamim is that as far as the first Pshita is concerned, there's no Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. He simply takes off his big day chol, goes into the mikveh, comes up from the mikveh, and now he's going to put on his big day kodesh, his big day lavan. That's the point at which he has an obligation to Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. But Rabbi Meir disagrees, the Omer, and he says Pashat, when he takes off his big day chol, Kiddush Yadav V'Raglav. The Chachamim denied it because the Chachamim hold that Pshita of Big Day Chol does not generate a chiyuv of Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. That's going to lead us to the question later that we only have 9 Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. So in any event, comes along Rabbi Meir, and he says that even the first Pshita, when he takes off his Big Day Chol, he needs a Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. After he puts on his big day zav, he needs another Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. So we see clearly, and this is explicit in the Brisa, that Rabbi Meir's Shita is that there's Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim before the Levisha, and that's for the Pshita, and then another Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim after the Levisha for the Levisha. So we see, I'm sorry, let me say that again. I crossed that last line out. That was the Chacham. We see, according to Rabbi Meir, that he needs a tefillah for Levisha, and that's going to take place after he does the Pshita. So he's taking off his big day chol. He needs a Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim in anticipation of the Levisha of big day zav. After he puts on his big day zav, he's going to need a second Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. So you see that according to Rabbi Meir, Levisha generates 2 Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. One after he takes off his previous begadim, and one after he puts on his new set of begadim. If that's the case, that Rabbi Meir holds Levisha generates a chiyuv of 2 Kiddushim, then that's clearly against our Mishnah, because then Rabbi Meir would hold that even in the first Tvila, when he takes off his big day chol, he needs 1 Kiddush Yadayim before the Levisha and another Kiddush Yadayim after Levisha, whereas our Mishnah says that he only needs 1 Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim on the first round, the first Levisha. Amalahu, so Rav Papa had to concede, Tanya. If there's such a brisa, I didn't know about this brisa, and it's clear from this brisa that according to Rabbi Meir, Tvila requires 2 Kiddushim. One is before the Levisha, and one is after Levisha. Is therefore, once we come to that conclusion, we saw that in the Tvila Shniya, that he takes off the garments, in that case, Tvila Shniya of Big Day Zav, does a Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, put on Big Day Lavon in order to go Lifnai V'Lifnim, and he needs another Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. It seems clear that Rabbi Meir is of the opinion that Levisha, Big Day Kahuna, generates 2 Kiddushim, one after he takes off the previous Begadim in anticipation of this Levisha, and one after he does the Levisha. Now, once the Gemara has clarified that according to Chachamim, there are 2 Machayvim of Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. There's Pshita and there's Levisha. According to Rabbi Meir, the Levisha generates 2 Kiddushim. Now the Gemara says, let's go back to the Cheshbon. Our Mishnah calculates 10 Kiddushim of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. Mishlema, it makes sense to Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir holds that he needs a Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim before the first Tvila, meaning after he takes off his big day Chol, and he's about to be Tovel and put on his big day Zahav, he needs Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim before the Tvila, and then after he wears his big day Zahav, another Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. Therefore, the number 10 is perfect. Hainu the Mishkachas law, and here we turn to Daf Lamed Beis, Asara Kiddushim El Rabbanan Tisha Hav. According to the Rabbanan, the first Tvila, when he takes off his big day chol does not require Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim because the Rabbanan hold that Pshita is Machayev Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, but not Pshita Bigdei Chol. Amilu Rabbanan Kiddusha Basra. The Rabbanan are going to add number 10, Kiddush number 10 as the last Kiddush, Ki Pashit, when he takes off his Bigdei Kodesh, because we said according to Rabbanan, not only does Levisha generate a Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, but even Pshita does. So when he takes off his Bigdei Kodesh at the end of the day, in order to wear his Bigdei Chol, Ovid Lehasam, he's got to do another Kiddush, his number 10 Kiddush. And that Kiddush is only according to the Chachamim who hold that there's a Kiddush on Pshita. According to Rabbi Meir, there's no Kiddush on Pshita. There are only 2 Kiddushim on Levisha. But since the first Levisha requires 2 Kiddushim, so before he does the first Levisha, he's got an extra Kiddush. He doesn't need the last Kiddush after he takes off his Bigdei Zav in order to complete the number 10. And this leads us to Tana Rabbanan, which is here on the 3rd line on Daf Lev, Kiminyan Lev. Hey, let me wish you a great day. Mazel tov.